Hi everyone, I'm Benoit Goutor and I will talk to you about shallow shotgun metagenomic as a cost-effective and accurate alternative to whole genome sequencing for taxonomic profiling in a clinical context. First, a few words about human microbiome. It consists in all microorganisms colonizing our body. I'm focusing on bacteria, but there is as well archaea, fungi and viruses, and they form a symbiosis interaction with ourselves. But when things goes wrong, it has been proven to have some links with several diseases, such as metabolic and autoimmune diseases, bowel inflammations, cancer, or more recently in neuropsychiatric disorders. It can be very useful in a clinical context as a non-invasive diagnosis or prognosis tool, and as well because we can act on it through interventions like diet interventions, probiotics, or fecal transplantations. To study this ecosystem, we have several sequencing strategies. First, metabarcoding consists in PCR amplification and sequencing of a phylogenetic marker gene. We often use 16S for bacteria. It's useful to characterize intra and inter-sample biodiversity. We can build taxonomic profiles and it's very cost efficient, but it has some limited taxonomic resolution, meaning that we cannot always identify the species but only the genus or the family. It has some limited taxonomic coverage, meaning that some populations may be lost either because they don't have the gene, either because the primers we used for the PCR did not match with their sequence, and also it has some amplification and gene copy number biases. On the other hand, shotgun metagenomic consists in sequencing all the DNA we find in an ecosystem. We can reach a way better resolution of taxonomic profiles. We can identify the species or even the subspecies. We can build functional profiles by identifying genes and pathways, and we can also reconstruct de novo genomes called metagenome-based assembled genomes or MAGs, but it's very costly in terms of sequencing and data processing. There is as well other analysis techniques, but I will not go into detail now. In clinical research now, we have to face a huge variability between patients, and we have as well new insight into the microbiome dynamics and plasticity. So we need to include many patients in our study or to have a longitudinal approach, meaning that we need several time points for the same patients, and as a consequence we have many samples to be processed, and metabarcoding is often the only choice to carry out large-scale studies. To give you an idea, here is the number of hits we find in PubMed for human gut microbiota and shotgun sequencing in red or 16S in green, and we can see that 16S is still widely predominant even today. So there is a need for alternative techniques. Shallow shotgun metagenomic is one of the techniques that could fill this gap. It's just like shotgun sequencing but at very low sequencing depths. Typically less than 1 million reads per sample are needed, while in a deep shotgun sequencing we will require 20 to 40 million reads per sample to study a human gut. As a consequence, we cannot perform any assembly of the read and we'll have to use a mapping-based approach. Compared to 16S, we can reach a fine resolution taxonomic profile. We can build functional profiles and we don't have the biases related to the PCR. And compared to deep shotgun, it is cost efficient, but there is a need for a representative catalog to perform the mapping, and some rare populations may be lost due to low sequencing depths. Here is a paper published by Hillman and his colleague in 2018. We can see that they could reconstruct nearly the same information at 50 million reads per sample and 500,000 reads per sample. The color refers to the body size. And for stool samples, they could reconstruct the Shannon diversity with as few as 10,000 reads per sample. There are still some open questions, and we wonder whether shallow shotgun metagenomic was suitable for clinical studies. To answer that, we first used simulation to see how we could optimize the precision and the reliability of taxonomic profiles at low sequencing depths, and then we would use the real data sets to see what information could be recovered at the sample level and at the cohort level. This is the pipeline we used. As an input we have either simulations or real data sets. Then after a pre-processing step we use subsampling to mimic low-depth sequencing. Then we do a mapping on a catalog called Unified Human Gut Genomes. This catalog was recently published and it gathered data from metagenomic studies, culturomic studies and public databases, and they gathered over 200,000 genomes that they clustered into 4,600 species. These species, they figured out that most of them didn't have any cultured representative. They are shown in green in this figure. So it's very important for us because thanks to this we are able to identify an uncultured organism. So after the mapping we will figure out that we have to perform a filtering on the hits, and we will discuss further about that. Then there is a step of reallocation of ambiguous reads. I will not have time to talk much about this, but if you have questions I will be happy to take them. And finally we obtain our taxonomic profiles. For the simulations we retrieved 100 taxonomic profiles from curated metagenomic data. We had an average diversity of 112 species and we simulated 10 million reads per sample. When we perform the mapping, we realize that we have reads that map to several genomes. We have some genomes that are really well covered, others not. So to label the reads, we first see how many hits do they have. If it's 0, we label them as unmapped. If it's only one hit, we label him as unambiguous, and more than one hit, ambiguous. And then we look if the target is in the hits, and we can label this as true positive or false positive. This is all the genomes hit by mapping. On the x-axis you find the fraction covered by unambiguous reads, and on the y-axis the unambiguous read counts. You can first notice that there is a huge amount of false positive shown in red that need to be filtered out. To do so, we could put a threshold on the read count or on the fraction covered, but we can notice that we don't take benefits of the shape of this scatter plot, and here we could retrieve some true positive that are relatively rare, so few read counts but well covered. And to take benefits of this shape, we used machine learning techniques. We used linear discriminant analysis, logistic regression and random forest to perform a task of classification. As an input they have the read count, the fraction covered, the specificity ratio, which is defined as a number of unambiguous reads mapped to a genome divided by all the reads mapped to this genome, and the sequencing depth. As an output, it says that if the hit corresponds to a truly present species or a spurious hit. We use the fourfold cross-validation process and automatic threshold syncing that tolerate 10% of false discovery rate in order to compare method and sequencing depths. This is the area under the curve of the classification task, using first only basic features such as read count and fraction covered. We have a AUC of 85 and 90% respectively, and we see a true enhancement while using machine learning technique, and especially random forest based filters that reaches an AUC of 97%. Even though we have an efficient filtering, there are some false negatives, so species that are expected in the profiles but not found, and this is their distribution regarding the proportion in the expected profile. We can see that when we move to dark colors, so that we reduce the sequencing depth, we have more and more false negative, but they mainly concern rare species. So for instance, if at 500,000 reads per sample, we identify most species beyond 10 to the power of -3. Back to real data now. We wanted to measure the effect of sequencing depth at different levels, at sample level and cohort level, and to apply our random forest based filters to see how it behaves on real data. and to compare it with a basic filtering technique which was inspired by what was done on a previously published paper on shallow shotgun metagenomic. What we could see is that this filter performed really bad on the simulations with a false negative rate of 40% and a false discovery rate of 45%. This is the datasets we used. We have 3 datasets covering different continents and clinical conditions, and every time we have 2 groups of patients, and we want to find differences between these 2 groups. In the first case, in Lumba, we have a patient with hepatic diseases, and we want to discriminate the one with advanced stage and early stage. In Matson, we have patients with cancer, and we want to predict whether they responded to immunotherapy or not. And finally, in Chin, we have patients that have liver cirrhosis versus healthy controls, and we have as well something interesting with a discovery and validation cohort. Here is what we obtain when we apply the random-based filters. This is at 10 million reads per sample. We can see that we can recognize the shape of the mapping hits. We produce profiles with an average sample richness around 100 species per sample, and we have a species relative abundance that goes down to 10 to the power of -4, so we can identify some rare species. Back to what interests us in the first place, I mean the impact of the sequencing depth on the results. Here is the diversity we can measure in each sample. On the x-axis it's what obtained at full depth, and on the y-axis what's obtained with subsampling at different levels. On the left part it's the richness, so the number of species that were identified. We can see that it's strongly impacted by the sequencing depth. So the fewer we have reads, the fewer we detect species. But on the right part, it's the Shannon index, which takes into account the proportions of the species, and this is way less impacted by the sequencing depth, so meaning that the overall profile is quite well reconstructed. At cohort level now, so we try to see if there are differences between groups of patients. The first test we perform seeks for differences in terms of biodiversity, so we display the p-value of an ANOVA on Shannon indices regarding to the sequencing depth. The first thing we can see is that there is a strong effect of the dataset, of course. So for instance, in Matson there is no signal, while in Kin there is a strong signal. The effect of the filtering technique can vary across datasets. For instance, in Kin, the lowest p-values were obtained by random forest-based technique, while it was the opposite in Lumba. And what interests us in the main place is the effect of sequencing depth, and we can see that the p-values are relatively not impacted by the sequencing depth, down to 500 reads per sample. The second test tries to see if 2 patients of the same groups tend to look alike more than 2 randomly picked patients. So it's called a PERMANOVA, and it's based on Bray-Curtis distances. And we can see again the same kind of results, so everything depends on the data set, and the effect of the sequencing depth is quite negligible, down to 500 reads per sample. Finally, we tried to see if we could predict the groups of the patients according to their microbiota, so we performed a classification with random forest, and we display here the area under the curve according to the sequencing depth. For Matson, we could not perform this classification because there were no signal, we saw that before, and for Kin, we could split into the discovery cohort and the validation cohort. So again, we can see that the effect of the filtering technique depends on the data sets, but the classification was possible, and the AUC were not strongly impacted, down to 500 reads per sample. A few take-home messages to conclude. So first, machine learning-based technique really enhanced the reliability and the precision of the taxonomic profiles. About shallow shotgun metagenomic, it was really suitable to study human gut microbiome, and it allowed to recover well the biological signal in the different data sets we studied, but some information is lost, mainly about rare species, if we want to control the reliability and the interpretability of the results. Some limitations about the filtering strategy. As it relies on the training step, it needs to be applied on the same conditions that were used for the training. These conditions are in terms of the diversity of the ecosystem we study, but as well on the distribution of the abundances and of the read length. And more generally about shallow shotgun metagenomic, as it relies on mapping-based approaches, it requires a really good representative catalog. It's not a problem in human gut microbiome, but it may be a problem in other applications. Finally, I would like to thank all my collaborators in Maillage, in Laboratoire Alphabio, and in CRCM, and Miguel and Disk Platforms for the computational resources, and Anerte and Alphabio for the funding. I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you. It was very interesting. So again, same processes. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. But I will start before people were not too shy to put them. I have a question about the rare species. So I was very intrigued by the fact that so okay, you cannot catch the rare species using your approach. That was pretty obvious. But I was wondering if you were trying to put in this to dig more in this direction so is it always the same rates of rare species? So do you have any idea about the, let's say, the threshold of rarity that you could not catch, or is this something that is not reachable right now?
It really depends on the amount of false discovery rate you tolerate, because for instance what I could see like in literature or stuff, you can put some threshold where you will catch a lot of rare species and you will be really happy with the fact that the sequencing depth doesn't have any impact, but you will have a profile with a lot of false positives, so it may be a problem for a lot of downstream interpretations or stuff. And we with the strategy we used, we really wanted to master at each sequencing depth to control the false discovery rate, and so we had these thresholds that were applied and where we looked for thresholds automatically, and then we could control that, and then we can clearly see the impact and the rarity of the species we can reach according to the sequencing depths, and we can see that the false negative increase at what we show on one of the slides.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. And so in following this question, so could you recommend with I don't know, maybe it's a stupid question also, but could you recommend, because there is this comparison between these different kind of sequencing. So do you think that there is like a decision process that you could go in advance to the biologists? Like what kind of sequencing do you recommend based on the disease, or I don't know, because you were working mainly in human microbiome where it's pretty homogeneous. And at the end, you were talking about that it's not necessarily tractable to put it in other kind of environment. But I would say, what is the reason? Do you need something more? It's because of the stability of the environment, or do you think it's more about the what we understand about the environment? And so could you guide
the most practical stuff is that you need a very good reference catalog, and you need to trust it and to be to have to rely on it. So that's really like the first step. and the first limitation regarding other applications that may concern in microbiome studies. And then it as well depends on what you're looking, as you will only identify the organism that have the more DNA in your ecosystem. If you study like rare viruses or stuff, you need to forget about that. And as well, if you want to do a deep functional study that needs assembly of genes to look for SNPs or stuff like that, it's not suitable. But in clinical research, where sometimes you just want to have a first view on an ecosystem related to a disease, and to me, it seems very interesting in comparison with for instance, 16S or stuff like that.
Okay.
But what was really interesting is that the groups, the structure of the data sets were not really impacted by the sequencing depths, and so if you plan to do this kind of analysis for the same amount of budget, I don't know the English word, for the same money, you'd rather include much more patients than to have a deep sequencing. That's one of the key message. I see there are questions. Clap.
So maybe take the one from Camille Trottier. How the read length impact your results? Did you check something like this?
We were so basically we kept to only one read length. So it may be a problem for instance, it's just Illumina short reads for now, and but even in Illumina short read it can vary, and this may impact because in our classifier we used for the filtering, as it takes both into account the read counts and the fraction covered. If you have longer reads, the kind of ratio between that would change regarding to the read length, but we kept at homogeneous read length so far.
Okay, thank you very much. I just let you, Benoit, answer the question from Denis in the chat, because you have to move on with a tight schedule. And we move on to the talk from